Welcome to the Keeping the Nostalgia Live show. I am your host, Billy Powell. You're watching this probably on YouTube. If you're not, you're probably listening to this on our audio podcast, which is anchor.fm/KTNA. And if you are on YouTube, please click that little subscribe button and you'll be updated on our new content. Today, I'm really excited about this interview because I watched this young man grow up, play basketball. I watched him play at Indiana University. I watched him win his Trester Award. I watched him win the Indiana Mr. Basketball. I watched him while he was playing in the Final Four in MSA. And that's Pat Graham, one of the handful of people who've won both the Trester Award and the Indiana Basketball Award. And Pat, thank you so much for taking some time with us. And sharing your love about this game of basketball, especially from the state of Indiana.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You know, we're in chatting back and forth and getting ready for the show. We were like, we're talking Indiana basketball, and then look what the team does last night.
Yeah, it was nice to see finally.
And you did exactly what you said you wanted to do, by the way. You were going to bite your tongue. You just bit your tongue, didn't you?
Yes, I did. The good and bad. Last night, I'm helping coach at Evansville Harrison, and we were scouting, and so we were out at Evansville North watching a couple games that we're preparing for Friday night. But so I didn't get to watch the game, but I did have my cell phone down, and I had the update on the score, and kept my eye on it. And you're up 15 in the first half, and then you see it dwindle to 5, and then oh no, they got the lead, and you think here the worst is coming, and then they pulled it out. Now I didn't watch the game, I didn't have a DVR and all that stuff, so I really don't know the ins and outs of what happened last night. But when it says win beside the game, I really don't care at this point in time.
I know I'm putting the cart before the horse here, but what do you think about the state of Indiana basketball? And you don't have to bite your tongue.
Well, are you talking about the Hoosiers, or are you talking about the state in general? Or
I'm talking about the Hoosiers.
So here's how I answer that, and I'll kind of try to be, if you say anything negative, you're going to get blasted, and if you say anything positive, well, then you're a suck ass, and I'm going to try to be honest about it. The one thing about Indiana basketball, and the reason that the Todd Learys and the Joe Hillmans and the Calbert Cheneys and the whoever I played with back in those days, the reason I feel like we have every right to say what we say is because we played, and we're not the only ones. We played in an era where you sold your soul to the devil for Indiana University, and you didn't play for yourself, and you were totally team, and winning was the result that you wanted. You didn't count points and blah 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 blah. That's what everybody says and wants to happen, but we truly lived it. We loved the game of basketball. Every one of us did. Everyone that I played with did. We understood if you lost, it was going to be miserable, and if you won, well, it still may be miserable, but you got a little bit of comfort in winning. And we all enjoyed each other. We were unselfish. We knew who the guy was. It was a guy named Calbert Cheney, and no one questioned that. Coaches were hard. Coaches were tough. Coaches were hard on you. Then when you flip it over, I think every one of the guys that I played with for my 5 years were tough, competitive. Did we win every game? Absolutely not. Zero. No, but we absolutely gave everything we had. I lived through 3 broken bones, and I basically played 3 years. I didn't play 4, but I gave everything I had. And when I left IU, it's like I've always told people, I give Coach Knight and the program everything I had, and I can keep my head high for that. I think almost every guy I played with felt the same way. So, turn back, and it's just not this year, it's any year when Indiana plays and I don't feel like they're playing hard, or I don't think they're competitive, or I don't think they they're playing for pride. It hurts my soul. I'm not mad. I mean, my life is the same today as it is if we won or lost last night. But it does bug me. I mean, I'm an Indiana fan. I want them to win every game. But yeah, I mean, it's bothered me. I mean, and then, of course, you have every argument, well, you need more Indiana kids. I don't know. Maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't. I'm not recruiting. I'm not there every day. I've been the one practice this year. So I don't know what the day in, day out of practice is. And that's really the nuts and bolts of any program, in my opinion. The starting lineup's made in practice the 3 or 4 days before practice. It's not based on talent or NIL money and all that stuff. So I can't really answer what's going on or what the issue is or whatever that case may be. I can't answer that and be honest and truly state a fact. It's totally a guess. The thing that bothers me is when I don't feel we're competitive and pit bull mean, tough-minded, ornery, win at all costs, lay your blood, sweat, and tears on the floor. That type of player, that type of team, that hurts my soul when Indiana's not like that.
I agree with that. And in today's society, if you are on, it's almost, you were taught growing up to be honest, but today, if you're honest, the fallback that you get on your honesty about something is kind of ridiculous.
Well, and it doesn't matter if it's Notre Dame football, Indiana, Kentucky basketball. I mean, let's be honest. The fans are crazy. They're absolutely nuts. And look, I'm a diehard Cleveland Browns fan. And I'm an idiot when it comes to football season, right? So I get that. I totally understand. The difference between today and I'll just speak my time at IU or my time in high school. I can only speak about that. And I hate to say it, it's social media. I mean, I can get on and I look at Twitter all the time and I look for information. It's stories or whatever. I mean, I don't get a newspaper anymore. But when you get on Twitter, and I don't care if it's Galloway, you can bring up any subject. You can bring up a player, you can bring up the game last night, you bring them. There's hundreds of thousands of comments. And sometimes I'll find myself reading them and you go, oh my gosh. Number one, this person has no clue what is going on. Then the other guy's just a complete fanboy and whatever's red and white's right and whatever's blue and white's wrong. And, it's like, come on, you have to have you have to be realistic about this. Like everything Indiana does is not perfect and everything that Kentucky and Purdue does is wrong. I'm just not like that. I kind of can see good and bad and everything. But man, social media has just been, I thank God we didn't, I mean, cause it bothered me. I'll be honest with you. I mean, like Trey Galloway's a kid. I really like that kid. Like, I mean, he has shortcomings just like I did. But like, I feel like he gives his heart, right? So I root for that kid. And the stuff that I read on Twitter and stuff, it's just like blasting him. But then on the flip side, there's people that just think he's awesome because he's wearing red and white and, he's an Indiana kid. Well, that's not right either. But then, the other half hates him because he can't shoot. Well, that's stupid too. So I just kind of I just shake my head sometimes because I'm like, I know more about the game, and anybody that played that knows a little bit more about it and went through it. They understand kind of the day-to-day process, and they understand what a loss means, and on the psyche of the player, and you got to go to class the next day. It sucks. I mean, it just sucks. And people sometimes forget that we're talking about kids, we're talking about human beings. But on the flip side, I've seen and heard things that I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I'd have done that after a loss. I don't know if I'd be having a good time, let's just say, after loss. Like we got 6 a.m. in the morning or 9 a.m. in the morning. Like this is going to be hell. And we knew that. So again, every team, every coach, every system is different. And I just know the one we played under, and I didn't have any problem with it. I'm not saying it was the perfect thing. There was a lot of things that was messed up with that too. It's not perfect. Coach Knight wasn't perfect, and what we did wasn't perfect, and we didn't win every game. I just know how we mentally um, love that jersey. And when I watch a game and I don't feel like those kids on that floor love that jersey like I did, it hurts my soul. And I'm not saying all the kids. That's not what I'm saying. And I'm not saying NIL or transfer portal. I'm not blaming anything. I just can watch it. And I'm not just talking about Indiana. Hell, I can watch Purdue or USI or University of Evansville, or I watch Clemson a lot because there's a guy from Brad Burnell, the head coach there's from Evansville, and he's got a couple of good friends of mine or good friends of his. And you watch those kids, and when you see a team, a college basketball team that's not playing with everything they have, it hurts me. Indiana especially.
Love that perspective, though. Pat, for those who don't know, tell us a little bit about where you were born and raised, a little bit about your family, and who put that basketball in your hand first.
So I grew up in Borden, Indiana, which the Borden Braves, they are a 1A school, tiny school. And growing up, it was the basketball, about 3 months, when I was in grade school. And as soon as the basketball season was over, baseball, I think we had 3 teams in the league in Borden. And so you got to play like 6 or 7 games. And then of course it was such a small school, you didn't have football. And at that time you didn't have soccer and all these other things, golf, you didn't have any of that stuff. So there was a tennis court up the way, and my dad and I basically self-taught ourselves just to have something to do. We went up and played tennis a lot. So I kind of fell in love with tennis and basketball. And in the summertime, my mom and dad worked, and my uncle was athletic director at Floyd Central High School, which is about 10 miles away, let's say. So in the summertime, I got to go to Floyd Central. So it was my built-in babysitter. And so what I do? Well, Coach Hinton was having camp. So since I was probably in second, third grade, I just lived at Floyd Central's gym throughout the summer. And well, it was the, junior high camp. Well, I was like a third grader. I'd go to it. So I just lived in that gym, and it was probably, luckily, I don't know how it fell out, but it was the greatest thing ever. I mean, I basically lived in a gym all day, all summer, and it was it was awesome. So I lived in Borden, but I was kind of a Highlander at heart, growing up. And so when, I was a sixth grader and we finished, my dad basically set me down and said, here's the deal. And I mean, again, when I was in sixth grade, I was a good little basketball player, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, we got a, really good. No, it was nothing. I wasn't any better than anybody else when I was in sixth grade. I enjoyed it and I loved it. My dad said, we can Borden, we can pay tuition, go to Silver Creek, or we can move and go to Floyd Central. And I'm like, let's put the house up for sale. So I got to choose as a sixth grader how the hell I made that choice. But I mean, I have zero against Borden. I love Borden and still family there. But Floyd Central was a big school. I mean, there's a hell of a lot bigger schools than Floyd Central, but it was a 4A school. I would have graduated with more than 25, 30 kids in my class, girls included. And, you go to Floyd Central, it was like damn near a miniature college. And I was like, wow. But it opened up so many more doors, and it obviously helped me in basketball. And so, yeah, we moved to Floyd Central, and then kind of the rest was history as far as seventh grader on. And that's where I went. So, like I said, I still have family, and my grandparents still have a farm. They're post passed, but we still have the farm over in Borden, and I love Borden. But yeah, I was meant to be at Floyd Central over Borden, and I'm just thankful as a sixth grader I made that decision.
Tell us a little bit about Coach Hinton and what he means to you, and what was he as intense as I've read and I've seen?
So Coach Hinton, he was, to this day, I mean, I don't know how old he is, but he's way too old to be coaching. And his son is the head coach at Corden, and his wife is the head coach and just won the state championship girls at Lanesville, which is a few miles apart. And he's assistant coach for both of them. And I'm just laugh. I'm like, good Lord, coach, like you need to be done with this. But he's gonna die on the sidelines, and that's just the way it is. But at Floyd Central, like I can remember being in camp, and of course I just knew him as Coach Hinton, but man, when he walked in the room and he walked in the gym, like the balls bounced differently. And he was up on a pedestal for me. I mean, that was my ultimate goal, was to play for him one day. And he had an assistant coach named Blaine Dust, and Blaine Dust played for Jack Butcher at Lagodi. And he took a liking to me when I was young. And he and I had a great relationship. We had a great relationship, but people don't understand, like, we battled in practice. I mean, it was not, they were tough on the better players. They were much different then than coaches are today. You know, today you got to kiss every kid's ass, and you know, oh my God, he'll transfer and he'll leave or whatever. Well, we moved to go play for these guys, and you know, I wasn't going anywhere. This was my ultimate goal, to play for Coach Hinton, and you know, I wouldn't trade that for anything. That was, without question, best years of my life, playing through high school for those guys. But
And
tough, I can't even explain tough. I mean, I've told kids, and you know, I'm not trying to give numbers, but I mean, I remember many of times scoring 30 and 40 in games. And you know, today, in selfish, again, Twitter world, that'd be great. And I would, you know, I'd feel good about myself, and you know, I'm proud of myself. And but I knew going out of the locker room, and you know, you go in the locker room, and I'm like, 5 minutes of undressing me basically with words, and I walk away, and I'm like, I was the worst player on the floor. And I'm like, wait, I just had 42. You know, it's just, but that's just the way he was, and he expected more. And you know, you didn't rebound, you didn't guard, and or we lost this game, and it's all because of you, and you didn't lead. And it just, if it wasn't for them, Coach Hinton and Coach Dust never would have made it at IU, and never would have made it through the injuries and all that. Of course, I got two great parents too, but I mean, all that together helped me go through IU pretty easy, really.
was Indiana University your first choice, or it was? I mean, how big of Indiana University fans was your family, and did you, as a youngster, were you like, I'm going to play for Indiana one of these days?
Well, growing up, my dad always had a dislike, let's say, for Kentucky, and I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't ever just say, oh my gosh, we were just Indiana fans, but we watched games. We watched a lot of games, trust me. But you know, I'd say my dad was probably more of an Indiana fan than anyone, but it wasn't just, you know, Indiana was number one. He didn't watch anyone else, and everyone else is bad and Indiana's good. It wasn't that type of thing. But I can remember in 1980, or actually 81, and you know, right in those years was when DePaul was really good. Mark Aguirre and those great teams that Coach Meyer had. And of course, like Sports Illustrated and the Louisville Courier Journal, which was one of the greatest sports pages ever. Like, thing was DePaul. I mean, they were ranked number one like 2 or 3 years in a row and all that. And so, being a young kid, who's winning? You know, everybody's a King Chiefs fan now. But so I always liked DePaul, because I can remember on Sundays, and Al McGuire was doing the radio or doing the TV, and like in the wintertime, and I can remember watching DePaul play, and then, you know, timeouts, I'd run outside and shoot a couple with my gloves on. I'd run back in, watch the game, timeout, halftime, you go out and shoot. So the NCAA tournament starting, my dad said, hey, you know, who you going to root for? And I said, well, I'll take DePaul. I'm like, I got this. And I said, who you got? He goes, well, I'm going to take Indiana. Well, 81, that's the year Indiana wins it. And DePaul gets beat, St. Joseph's, you know, and I can remember Mark Aguirre hugging the basketball and on Sports Illustrated, I think it was Sports Illustrated, and crying and devastated. which I understand. And so dad always just kind of laughed and made fun of me. And so that's kind of when I was like, well, I know DePaul's number one, but Indiana won it. So I probably started leaning towards Indiana a little bit more then. But, my first letter was ever when I was being recruited was from Purdue. Um, again, I lived an hour and a half from Lexington, an hour and a half from Bloomington, 10 minutes from University of Louisville, and 3 hours, 2.5 hours from Purdue. So when it come right down to it, and the recruiting got going, and of course I played on one of the greatest AAU teams ever, Bloomington Red, with Bailey and Montross and Leary and Nate Tubbs and Chris Lawson and Greg. I mean, it was ridiculous, that AAU team, and Matt Painter. A lot of fun. I mean, a lot of fun, a lot of W's and not many losses. But when the recruiting started going, and I basically was like, this is real simple. It's Purdue, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisville. Like, I don't have to go very far. And I've got, I didn't care about going to Florida or out west or anything. I mean, I was a hometown kid and loved Southern Indiana. So I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. So those were my final four. And then, as dumb as, well, not dumb, but Allen Houston was going to Louisville, which we played against each other every year across the river. And he was at Ballard. And I'm like, well, I'm not going where Allen's going, because Allen was, he's top 5 player in the country. This is real simple. And his dad actually is the one that was recruiting me to Louisville. And my high school coach kind of wanted me to go to Louisville a little bit, just because he thought they always like shooters there, which every place likes shooters, but he always had a liking for Crum and shooters. But I said no to Louisville, and I love Coach Katie, and we went up there a few times, and I love Coach Katie, and I said no to them. So now it was down to Indiana, Kentucky. And my dad never really said much, but my dad never said a word. I mean, if I went to Kentucky, he would have not have been, it would have been his favorite choice, but he'd have lived with it. And that's when the Emory package falls open. Chris Mills, Sean Kemp, that whole Eddie Sutton thing. That's when, I'm getting ready to commit in probably a month. And that's when that whole thing breaks about Kentucky. And they get, they're going to get the death penalty. And I can remember Pat Forty was not too far out of college, basically. And he did all our games in high school a lot of times. So I called him and I was like, what's going on with Kentucky? Of course, there's no social media. So, your only information is the news at 6:00 or 5:30 or newspaper. And he's like, Pat, they got him on everything. I mean, they've got him on payments, grades, SAT scores, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, he goes, this, it could be SMU football. So I quickly was like, well, Kentucky's out. I'm not going to go down there and not play in the NCAA tournament. So it made my choice very easy. I'm pretty sure I was leaning towards Indiana, but Kentucky was awful nice. I mean, you go down there on a recruiting visit and it's like, holy hell. I mean, and Rex Chapman was down there, and Eddie Davender and Winston Bennett and those guys. And so being a basketball fan, it was kind of neat. I mean, I enjoyed going down there, but when that all happened, I remember Coach Casey calling me and saying, don't believe what you're reading. Don't believe what you're reading. And then, when it all broke, the decision was easy, and I went to Indiana.
You talked about AAU, and I love the phrase 6 degrees of separation, because I try to get one of those degrees to my guest that is on the show. And you played for Coach Red Taylor on that AAU squad, and I got to travel with Coach Taylor on a couple of his teams.
Well, Red was up in Indianapolis, so Greg Graham played for, yeah. So I never played for him.
You never played for Coach Taylor?
No. We had well, not a ton, but Chris Byers, I'm trying to think of some of the different guys we had. Scott May coached us one summer, a few games. George McGinnis coached us a tournament or two. We had some just different guys. Of course, Coach Knight's son, Tim Knight's, kind of ran the Bloomington AAU or the Bloomington Red and White. And I don't even know which team we were, but there was two teams basically. But again, back then, like I was playing on a team out of Coach Matthews from New Washington. I mean, it was a couple Southern Indiana kids from his two sons who were hell of players, Shannon Arthur and me, and I think Shane Gibson, a kid on my high school team, just to get together team, good little team. And then we played up in Bloomington, and I played really well. And the next few days, I get a phone call from Bloomington and it says they want you to join Bloomington Red. And I had to, that was, talk about a hard phone call. I was scared to death to call Coach Matthews and said, I've got this opportunity. And he basically said, if you don't say yes to that, I'm going to kick you off this team. You have to go to that. You have to go. So I think I was a sophomore when I started playing with those guys. But so there was a team from over where I was from in my age group. I know Evansville had one because Calvert and David Hinton went to Boston College. They were on that one. There was Tisdale Tigers, which was up in Indianapolis, and Greg Graham and Ron Bayless was on that one. I think there was one in Fort Wayne. There was one in Bloomington. Like, that was it. And now, there's 25 teams from Evansville in each age group. I mean, it's so watered down. And again, back when I was there, and I'm not saying it was right or wrong, AAU had just really got started. But I can remember when you got asked to play on an AAU team back when I was playing, I mean, you knew you were a decent player. Not every team could, dads didn't create teams and that type of thing. So there was no bad teams playing AAU back when we were in high school. And now it's just, I still coach a little bit AAU. I never head coach. I'm always the assistant. I enjoy working with kids, but you just watch and you just shake your head and you're like, this isn't the AAU I played on. Because, if Leary started, he didn't play well, Pat Graham come in. And then if Pat Graham didn't play well, Matt Painter come in. It was like, if you didn't play hard and well, there was another guy on the bench coming in for you. And so it was competitive. And I don't really remember too many, like, I played if I was playing well, I played the whole game. Like, we had guys. I mean, I think Matt Petty that went to Creighton was probably, Creighton at that time isn't Creighton today. I mean, Creighton would have been the lowest D1 kid on our team. You know what I'm saying? Like, we had legitimately 12 kids going D1, big boy D1. And so now, you go watch these tournaments and you're like, there's not a D1 kid in this gym and there's 75 teams. And it's just like, it's a money grab now. And again, I'm not going to be my dad, because my dad despises AAU, despises it, because he's, grumpy old man and I'm not far behind him. But, he's just like, that's just not basketball. 100% agree. It is not basketball. But for good players, it's a chance to go out and play against better competition, guys that are equal or better than you. Guys that today, we didn't do it back in the day, but guys today, like, well, the ball's in the best player's hand all the time. Well, when you play AAU, the ball's not going to be in your hand because there's another guy on your team or a couple of guys on your team that are just as good. And you may have to move from the point to the 2, or the 2 to the 3, or the 3 to the 4. So it makes it blossoms your game for really, really, really good players. I think it's benefits them and use it in the right way. But, everybody thinks, well, if I play AAU, North Carolina is going to see me. Not going to happen. Not going to happen.
So when you got to Floyd Central, did you know that incoming that you guys had something special for the Final Four run?
So when I was a freshman, it was a senior-laden team. I think there were 7 seniors on that team. There was a sophomore named John Schellenberg, hell of a player, played at USI here in Evansville. His 3 older brothers had played at Alabama, Forest, Dayton, and then John was the youngest. He was a sophomore. The rest were seniors, and then I was a freshman. And the other freshman on our team, Shane Gibson, was pretty good freshman too. We had a good class my freshman year. We had a very good class. But I remember my first year, my first game, I think was against Crawford County. And I played JV first half. And when I was going off the floor, Coach Hinton said, take that jersey off or something along those lines. Well, I pissed myself because I thought, what I do wrong, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what, I was scared. I mean, of course, back then, that's when you had fear and respect for your coaches. Today, a kid throw his jersey, walk out. But so I'm like, what I do wrong? And he's like, no, you're done playing JV. So I thought, okay. So I don't know how much you're going to play varsity, but practicing and going against the varsity every day is going to be for your long term than playing JV. And I was kind of like, cool. But, so again, if Joe Hinton said this, my dad goes, well, sounds good to me. I mean, Joe Hinton was right. So I think I averaged like 2 points a game my freshman year. I would play no 3-point line, but we didn't. There wasn't very many good shooters on that team, so I was probably the best shooter from the outside or threat, let's say. And so I would come in games when they would pack it in, and I would come in, and at least the opposing team would have to come out a little bit, and then it would open things up. And I was kind of used as that piece to that team. And then sophomore year, we just got drummed because all those seniors were gone, and we just got our teeth kicked in. And then junior year, we had a good team, made a little run, but Jeff got us in regional. And then senior year, we were ready. And, that's, if I had one, there's a couple nightmares I have and I still wake up to, and that's that Kokomo game. And look, Basil Mobby and Kokomo beat us. There was no, I've watched the game before, not many times, but I did watch it, I don't know, 10 years ago. They were better that day. Now, they were not a better team, but they were better that day, and that's what counts. But I've always said to, Montross, and rest in peace, kid, but Montross and Leary, I was like, man, we were the one team that could have got you guys. Because we had, I mean, we had 2 guys bigger than 3 guys bigger than me. So did we have a chance to beat Montross? Yeah, but we didn't get there, so it doesn't really matter.
What was it like? Because I found I had a nice gentleman who's out of Atlanta, Georgia, and he had 8 boxes of video cassettes, and he sent them to me. And I got to during that Final Four, I got to pull footage of you being announced and being the Trester Award winner.
Yeah.
What was that like? Because I know you got beat, but then to get that award, with any kind of consolation to what happened that day, or what kind of feeling do you get when you're named the Trester Award winner?
Nothing. Honestly, I was so I'm not saying that the Trester Award is not a great award. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying was I was so got over high school basketball, which I knew how special it was and how much I loved it, and how much I enjoyed. Although Coach Hinton and Coach Dustin and me battled, how much, I mean, it was my life 360 days out of the year. And it was like, this is over. I was crushed. And I, didn't think we put our best foot forward to try to get to Montross and Leary, but I was crushed. But here's the funny story on that. So I didn't even know how the Trust Award worked. And look, I'm proud of the award. Trust me. I'm never giving it back, or whatever you want to call it. But I didn't know you had the high school has to nominate a player or 2 or 3 or whatever. And then how the voting's done, I don't know. But all I know is Shane Gibson was, I averaged whatever 32 or whatever. Shane averaged 20, and then his brother that went to IUPU Fort Wayne and was an All-American up there, Division II. He probably averaged 12 or 13, and Sean was like 4.0 student, and we were all, back then we were all good kids. I mean, I'm not saying we were angels, but we were all pretty good kids. So when they're announcing this, like, Sean Gibson's winning this award, my teammate. Like, there's this, unless if it's from Floyd Central, Sean's winning it, it's over. There's no one else that can win it. When they said my name, I almost was embarrassed, because I didn't even know what to say. And now I find out, there's a lot of things that go involved in it, right? Leadership, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, Sean was the 4.0 student and he was a hell of a basketball player and blah, blah, blah. So I just always thought it was recognized as more of a rounded person. And I was like, I'm just some dumb jock. And so, I mean, I had 7 GPA. I was a good student, but it wasn't. I thought it was Sean Gibson. It was done. When they said my name, I didn't even know what to do. I didn't even know which way to walk. I mean, I'm kind of walking up there, kind of like, is everyone sure? Did we need to recount that? And it was honest. I was like, oh boy, I'm gonna catch hell from my buddies when I get back to the knobs. I'm like, oh, okay, well, let's go with it. So, but the best part about that whole video is my mom always laughs because her glasses. My mom's glasses, which is the funniest thing in the world. And I've had a lot of, you posted that, and I had a lot of buddies see it down here in Evansville, and they're like, man, were you a hick? I'm like, well, I'm still a hick. You can book that. But I'm like, man, I'm country as country can be. So yeah, it was kind of funny. But like I said, you put stuff on there all the time, and I kind of chuckled, and then I'm like, oh, this one's going to be my chuckle.
What was your first meeting like with Coach Knight?
So I told you we could be on here a long time. I've got a couple of good ones, but so I got a letter, a couple of course, back then, there were, again, no texting or whatever. It was just, you get a letter, and I don't know, I'd get 15 letters a day. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I remember University of California, Santa Barbara, I got seriously 5 letters a week from them. I'm like, Brian Shaw that played for the Celtics. I mean, like they sent me a photocopy. I was like, I can't imagine their mailing budget. But you get all these letters and you kind of read through them. And you're like, man, it's cool. It's cool. It's cool. So I did get my first letter ever was from Purdue, and I think my second was Indiana. And then I'm playing for Bloomington Red, and we played in a tournament at Bloomington South High School. And Harris played at Bloomington South. It was the first time I'd been there since this happened. And so we got done playing, and I believe this is when I was playing for the coach at New Washington, Coach Matthews. I was still playing on that smaller team down in Albany area, and we played really well. I remember I played against Pat Knight, and this is right. So I'm playing against Pat Knight, Chris Lawson, all these guys, and I know who they are, and none of those guys know who I am. Southern Indiana's forgotten. So I played really well. I did well. I shot well. I did something good, because at the end of the day, I went downstairs at Bloomington South to shower. So when I come up, I'm probably one of the last people there. And my mom was sitting there. My dad was at work. My mom was sitting there, and Sean Gibson, who should have won the Trester Award, was there watching. And Sean's just nervous wreck. I mean, just like, oh my gosh. And so we get in the car and we're driving home. And my mom says, Sean's like, you gotta tell him. I'm like, what happened? She goes, well, Coach and talk to me. And I'm like, Ken, this is, today's kid would be like, well, you should have, I was kind of like, for what? Did he need directions or something? Like, what did he come to you, talk to you for? She goes, well, he asked if it was okay if he started recruiting you. And I was like, I mean, the world stopped. Like, I was like, are you kidding me? And she goes, no, he was really nice. And da 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 da. I'm like, oh my Lord. So I said, well, what'd you say? And here's, of course, this is typical of my mom. She goes, well, I said, you do know he's diabetic. And I'm like, oh God. My heart stopped. Like, I was like, he's never going to call again. Like, you did what? You told him I was diabetic? Like, that's the last thing you tell a coach. Don't bring that up. Like, that's just, And so she goes, no, he was really nice about it. Said, if you played or shot the way you did today, I could care less what he is. And that was kind of it. That was kind of it. So I'm the whole time driving back thinking, oh my God, Coach Knight asked to recruit me. I'm just making small talk with a mother. And it's not like he had to ask her, but I think it was nice he did it and, break the ice or whatever you want to call it. And my mother breaks her ice with, he's diabetic. And I'm like, I'm never getting a call or a phone call, nothing. This is over. And it obviously didn't work out that way. And yeah, I'll go in IU. And I remember one of my first practices, I got low and I had to take a break. And I said something to Coach Knight. I walked over. I said, Coach, I need a couple of minutes. And he goes, look, I'm not a doctor. I don't care what you are. I don't care what you need. If you need it, go get it. Get back in practice as soon as possible. Leave me out of it. And I'm like, got it. Like, okay. This is kind of what Coach Hinton said when I was a freshman. So I'm like, well, I'm just letting you know if I pass out and fall down on the floor and, go into convulsions, I'm probably needing some sugar, but I got it. No big deal. So that's how that kind of worked out. But that was the first introduction Coach Knight had with me or my parents. And then thankfully he kept recruiting me, although I was, regardless of me being a diabetic or not.
What? Give me a couple more good Bob Knight stories.
So when
See, they just roll off your tongue.
Oh, I could. My dog's dropping his bone. I could. I mean, we all could do this. Like if we've always laughed if we ever get money problems, we all could write a book. But there was the one, and I wasn't prepared. And I'll probably mess it up, but there's hundreds. When I was being recruited, again, it was the summertime. Went up, was going to practice at Bloomington North or Bloomington South, one of the two, for this Bloomington AAU team, and I believe Coach Knight was wanting me to commit. And so my mom and dad were asked to come up. We were going to meet Coach Knight at Assembly Hall. And then afterwards, I was going to go to practice. And obviously, this is in the summertime. And again, I don't remember the timing of it. I think it was after my junior year. So it'd been before in between my junior and senior year. But we go up there and we walk in and Coach Knight walks up the ramp and we go into the basketball office and we walked into his office and I mean, there's stuff. There was a couch, guns and fishing poles and rods and reels and tackle. And then there was two chairs, kind of folding chairs, like that's on the bench the players sit in now. Like they were sitting there in front of his desk and then Coach Knight's desk. And I walked in and I was like, oh my God. I mean, the nostalgia stuff like you and I would love, like it was everywhere. But the hunting guns and the fishing and like just stuff was just everywhere. So the two chairs, there was stuff on them. Like there was no place to sit. So I remember Coach Dockich was with us. And so Coach Dockich walks over and he starts trying to move some stuff off the couch for my dad. And then my mom and I sit down in the chairs. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, it was hard for me to focus on Coach Knight because there was all this stuff. And I wanted to kind of look, I was like, that's kind of cool. I grew up fishing, so I was kind of interested in that. But so we sit down and I mean, like, there was not any small talk. It was his first comment was, I'm going to be honest with you, Pat. He goes, are you interested in Kentucky? Like, oh, I mean, I didn't know where to go because I was like, I've got to be honest. I mean, I haven't committed. I mean, I haven't done anything illegal here. And I'm like, well, here's where you either grow balls or you don't. And I was like, yes, sir. I said, I am. Kentucky's one of them I have looked at. And he goes, well, I'll be honest with you. and I'll make it. I don't want to say the words, but he goes, I don't want you wasting my bleeping time, and I don't want to waste your bleeping time. And I was like, oh God. I was like, well, double down. So I kind of said, yeah. I said, we have looked at Kentucky. So he tells Dockage to go get the last year's media guide from the Kentucky game. So Dockage leaves and goes gets that. And that's when then we just started talking. I was like, okay, got through that. Like he didn't kick us out of the office. But it was, you're sitting there like he asked you that point blank question. It's like if you lie, he's going to find out because everyone knows you've been on a recruiting visit. And I was like, well, here's where you got to, you got to be honest. And I was honest. And he asked me who else. And I said Louisville and Purdue. And, but it was really at that time down in Indiana, Kentucky. And I told him that. So then he starts going through the list of players they have and in front of me and how they'd use me here and blah, blah, blah. And he was honest. I'll be honest with you. That was one thing Coach Knight was different than a lot is that he didn't promise anything. And not that anyone did, not that anyone needed to promise me anything, but he was flat honest. And, like he tells every mother, you're going to get an education. Well, that was Mr. Obvious. But I mean, he told him this is up to him. Like if he comes up here and puts up and shuts up and does, he's going to play, and if not, he's going to go by the wayside. Very honest, which that's kind of how I was raised, and nothing promised. And again, he never said, nor do I think he could, I want you to commit. I've heard the Evans and Michael Lewis stories where he basically just says you're committing and Bob Hamill's going to call you and that stuff. He never really did that to me. So I left there and I did not commit, but he never asked me to commit. I think if he had asked me to commit, I'd have committed, but he never said it. So I was still kind of like, do they want me? Like he never said it. So I was like, I'm not going to say, hey, I'm coming there. And he goes, well, hold on, let's back up. And then I feel 2 inches tall. So we leave there and I find out later he's mad because I didn't commit. And I'm like, whoa. This isn't the way this was supposed to go. Like I was honest with him, got over that hurdle. And then now I was supposed to commit and didn't know I was supposed to, it was just bad communication. So I get home, not too much longer after this, the Emory package breaks open with Kentucky. Chris Mills, Sean Kemp, Eddie Sutton's son, SAT scores the gold chain, scores the $1,000 that was found in the Las Vegas airport, to Chris Mills' dad. I mean, it breaks. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to Kentucky. So I call Indiana. Believe I got a hold of Coach Felling. I said, I want to commit to you. And he goes, okay, Coach Knight's in, I don't know, Idaho or Montana or wherever the hell, hunting. We'll get 3 weeks. 3 weeks go by. He never called me. And I'm like, well, better open this recruiting back up because I messed this one up. I mean, I'm going through the mind of diabetic, didn't commit when I should have on the spot. I said Kentucky, all these things were going through my mind, and he wouldn't call me. So I call it, and Coach Felling's like, Pat, do not talk to any other school. You are coming here. This is a done deal. We just got to have him call you. And I'm like, I wasn't arrogant, but I was like, I'm a pretty good player here. I've got other offers. Like, are we really going to do this? 3 weeks. I mean, and again, that's just the way those days were. Like, that's how that worked. Now, today, the coach would have flown back from Montana to meet a player, make it that's just the way Coach Knight was. And I think, honestly, and I don't know this to be true, I never really talked to anybody about it. I think it was totally a mind game. I think it was totally a mind game to me as, do you really want to come here or do you really kind of like Kentucky? He basically wanted me to feel, number one, he's in charge. I'm not. Which got it. Number two, do you really want to come here? And those 3 weeks, but today's kid would have turned and called Michigan State and said, I'm coming there. of course, me as a player, I'm not saying you can't do that to quote unquote Mr. Basketball or Indiana All Star or whatever, but like I was a pretty good player, and he played that 3 week deal with me, and I stayed. I mean, I wasn't going to go anywhere, but it was a weird deal. But that was a funny story. I was like, and that took some ball. I mean, no coach can do that today. There's no way a coach is going to make a kid wait 3 weeks in the summertime. And especially when the crows are flying around or the hawks are flying around, because when they hear other schools are calling, right? And back then, no other school was calling, but it was kind of funny how it worked out. And it all worked out in the end. But yeah, it was 3 weeks. I had some sleepless nights there for 3 weeks.
What was it like when you heard the news, and who told you that you had won Indiana Mr. Basketball?
So I'll break when I say this. I try to tell myself I'd never do this. So I'll say it quickly because I will break. And we get back, we got beat, we got beat by Kokomo. Lawrence North wins the state championship. Bummed out. High school career's over. Love this gym. I've worked out in this gym so many times I can't see straight. Managers or the janitors always left the right door open for me. I was probably the only one that knew it was open. You had to open up with your fingers, and had the key to the lights. I was in the gym every night. I mean, I tell kids this all the time. I'm like, I was in there during the season at 7 o'clock, out of the season at 7 o'clock. At nighttime, my radio and 6 chairs, a ball, and I just worked out. And I was up there. I was working out in the gym, and it was in the evening. And my mother never walked in that gym when I was working out. Like, Dad would come in occasionally and watch me for 5 minutes and leave. And we lived about a mile from the school. And I was working out, and there was no one around. And look up, and my mom walks in. And my mom walks in, and I knew. And we had a good little moment. So that's the story. But yeah, my mom walked in, and she had never been in that gym to watch me work out. And when I saw the door open, again, my dad was at work. And when my mom walked in, I knew. And so I've always said I would have traded that for Leary's state championship trophy, but it was a pretty good parting gift, I guess I could say. See, I can't get through that story. I can never get through the story without
That's
saying
okay, though. Those are the things that touch us, man. There's things that I will break over without anybody saying anything to me. So what was the Indiana All-Star experience like?
Well, the Miss Basketball was Renee Westmoreland from Scottsburg. And I thought it was just, and I'm not cutting on the Indiana All-Star game at all, but I thought it was just this is going to be awesome. It's going to be AAU again, right? It's going to be all these guys, and we're all going to go practice, and some new guys, because Richie Mount never practiced with us. And there were some new guys to it. And we're like, you know what, this will be cool. It's just, we're going to play open gym basically for a week. And I go there, and me and Renee got to go to every speaking engagement and luncheon and all these handshake things, being Mr. and Miss Basketball. And that was a lot of times the times practice was. And I'm like, well, this sucks. I mean, I don't really get into the handshake and dinners or luncheons. And so I hated that stuff. God, I hated that. But, they wanted the Mr. Basketball and the Miss Basketball, and she was a lot better at it than I was. But that part I didn't care for. Then the Indiana All-Star, the actual games, I didn't. Of course, you're playing against Travis Ford and Allen Houston. We go to, I guess the first one was in Indianapolis, and we should win this one, right? Because we're in home state, but they kick our ass, and then we go to Louisville, and we kick their ass. So it was kind of bass backwards, but it was that jersey when I was growing up, it really wasn't Mr. Basketball that was my ultimate goal. I mean, at my high school, Jerry Hale and Larry Schellenberg and Jerry Schellenberg have their picture up on the wall, Indiana All-Star uniform. And like that was my growing up, like that was the pinnacle. Like if I could make the Indiana All-Star team, start for Floyd Central, make the Indiana All-Star team. You can kill me right then. I'm done. I mean, life, that's the pinnacle of life. And so not only to be on the Indiana All-Star team, but then win Mr. Basketball, it was even better. And then when you get there, there was just a lot of, it wasn't about the game of basketball. There was a lot of stuff that went in. I just thought, let's show up, let's play. It's going to be awesome. Bunch of good guys will play. And it turned into a lot of, well, he should have this number and this guy should be here. Why didn't this guy make it? This kid shouldn't have made it. It was like, this is stupid. And then it turned into the first time I really ever felt selfishness and I got to get mine and that type of thing. And to be honest with you, I'm not saying I wasn't part of that too. I mean, you're playing in Indianapolis and you're Mr. Basketball. And yeah, I remember I didn't have a very good game there. I played pretty well in Louisville, but we were good. I mean, both teams were really good. And then what's sad is, like I said, that was my Super Bowl. I mean, if I could play for Floyd Central and make the Indiana All-Star team and have one of those jerseys and it's put up in my gym, this is the greatest thing in the world. It wasn't what I thought it was. And then today, the Indiana All-Star is an afterthought. Kids that, hold on a second, my dog's got his squeaky toy. But now the Indiana Kentucky All-Star team, it's not even a piece. It's barely even, it's hanging on, basically, is what it is. And so you got kids that basically are saying, I'm not playing in it. I'm like, do what? Like that was my Super Bowl. I mean, that was selfishly, if you make this team, it means you're one of the top 12 players in the state. I mean, this is the thing. Now they, I think they have it. Hell, they had it over like in Owensboro or something. I mean, it's just not what it used to be. But again, basketball is not quite what it used to be either, in my mind.
How do you get into high school basketball coaching?
Well, when I moved down here, and I remember my girlfriend at the time, wife now, we moved here. We didn't know anybody in Evansville, Indiana, and I found out that two of the best teams in the area were Bosse and Harrison, and Memorial. And just so happened that night, Harrison and Bosse were playing. And this is how naive I was. And welcome to class basketball too. But I called the high school. I mean, it's going to be sold out, right? Every gym I ever played in was sold out. And I called and I said, listen, I said, this is the time I'm going to be able to be there. I wasn't name dropping or anything, but I just said, is there any way I could pay for 2 tickets? But you could hold them at the door. And they're like, I mean, the lady was like, are you crazy? And I said, well, I don't know, sold out. She goes, trust me, it won't be sold out. I go, isn't Bosse and Harrison? Yeah, they're 2 of the better teams. And I was like, okay, so we go to the game. And there was probably 1,000 people there at Harrison High School. And I sat right behind the bench, and I was 2 really, really good teams. And Leveron Williams was at Bosse that played running back for IU. And Harrison had a really good team. And I'm like, what is going on? And then, this is the first time since I was in high school that I'd been in high school gyms watching high school basketball. I mean, when you're in college, you never are. And I was floored. And I found out then that, like, I'm like, this is weird. Like, this whole dynamic of class basketball is coming in, and things changed. And, the whole class basketball thing that's going now, I'll sound like an old grumpy man, but I said, I don't think it's helped the game. I understand that, Borden, where I moved from, they won a state championship. I don't know if it was 8-10 years ago or whatever, but it's good for those 1A schools. I get it, but it's like my dad always said, bad 1A schools are bad if it's one class or four classes. Bad 1A schools are bad regardless. Bad 2A, bad 3A, bad 4A schools are bad teams. Doesn't matter if you make 74 classes. Brandy. Yeah, my dog's got the squeaky toy out. It's going to drive me nuts. But
Oh, don't worry. I've got a cat outside my door. His name's Chindy. He's got marks on his chin, and I'm from Indianapolis, so his name's Chindy, and he's out there thinking that he's going to be a part of the show. So
there you
it's
go. That's good.
cats versus dogs. It's all good.
Well, I was like, oh, do I go get it or not? But so yeah, I mean, I think there was something about. I understand. Look, I understand. There's four classes. I'll give you an example. Harrison's at the small of 4A, and there's teams in Indianapolis that got 4,000 students. So there's 4,000 students versus 1,400 students. Well, that's a bigger discrepancy than 1,400 students and 300 students. And this 300 student is in 1A, 1,400's in 4A, going against 4,000 people at Carmel. And I'm not picking on Carmel. Great school, great, but you understand what I'm saying. Like, I'm like, the class thing just doesn't do it for me. And this is my reasoning. I remember growing up in Borden, and Floyd Central was the big brother. That's who everyone disliked. New Albany, Jeff, Floyd Central. But we were this little tiny Borden, Salem, Pekin, all these little schools. If Borden could upset Floyd Central, it was the state championship. It created community rivalries. It created, that's, I down in this area, Southridge, if they could upset Big Bad Jasper, and again, I'm talking Southern Indiana, so some people might not understand that, but Jasper, they got all the nice stuff, and we're a little Southridge here. Well, Borden felt the same way, and I remember when I was we're talking about 1980. I remember Brian Robertson, who was my idol at Borden, and they were 19-1. They were really good, really good, and they draw Floyd Central in the sectional. And I'm like, Borden's going to win. Like, I mean, this is a bet, this is before I moved. And I remember going to the game, and Floyd Central beats them pretty good. And I'm like, oh, but my point is, if Borden could have knocked them off, that's what Hoosier Hysteria to me was. That was, I mean, I grew up watching this, and my dad we went to Borden games. We went to Floyd Central games. I remember going watching Evansville Bossy at New Albany. I mean, we went to high school games all over. It wasn't just one school. And I miss those days. And again, I'm not saying I'm right and everyone else is wrong. That's just the way I grew up and how my dad and I did things. And I just missed that one trophy being lifted. I missed that. I think that was cool. But I cannot argue against the 1 and 2A schools that have no chance to get in there either. I can see both sides very easy. But I'm just kind of traditionalist maybe, and I kind of liked it the way it used to be. I remember Chris Reynolds, when we were playing at IU, he made a comment. He said, is there talk about Indiana? Of course, they had I think six classes in Illinois. And Bailey and I were like, yeah. And he's like, and this is, I don't think it had happened yet. They were talking about it. He's like, man, that's sad, because he goes, that was the coolest thing ever. We in Illinois, we always talked about how cool that was at you all. Everyone else has classes except Indiana. I think Kentucky probably did too, but he said that was always cool that you all only had one, and here we got six. He said, we just always thought that was kind of cool. That's Chris Reynolds saying that. So I don't know. It's never going to go back. And if they went back and had one class, I don't know if it helps the class. I don't know if it helps the crowds. I don't know if it helps or hurts them, but I know when it went to class, it did not help the crowds at all.
There's almost too many choices today, too. Technology and almost too many choices
100%.
what to watch and go and do.
Well, it's, here in Evansville, and I can't talk about anybody else, but in Evansville, you can pretty much get on either YouTube or the IHSAA and watch the games, local games. And I like going to the games. Occasionally you can't, and you turn it on, and okay, I'll watch a team we either getting ready to play or whatever. Or it might be a kid I know his parents and I want to watch them. But if you can watch it on TV, why in the hell would you go to the game? And that's a lot of people. Now, me, I want to go to the game. I want to see the flow of the game. I want to see the sweat. I want to see the speed. I want to, it's kind of like when I went to an IU or Louisville game and I was like, holy man, I didn't know how big those guys were until you get live. Well, I kind of do the same thing with high school basketball. I like going to the game, but a lot of people don't. And I'm like, man, if you ever shut that YouTube, maybe you get more of those people coming to the games. I don't know if maybe you do, maybe you don't, but I've always kind of questioned that.
And what is Evansville Harrison like this year?
Pretty nice team. We, I coached at Memorial. My kids went there. I helped Coach Wilgus, which love Coach Wilgus, and he gave me an opportunity to be an assistant. And I I probably was a little smarter about basketball than I thought I was, but then it's kind of how you deal with kids. And I'm not I think what I enjoy most about basketball and coaching, I coach Little League, and of course I've got a lot of parents that hate me too. So, I guess it's the way of the world, but I love working with kids. I love dealing with kids. I had great, great, great coaches growing up, and I got a little bit of that stuff from them, and I passed along or whatever. And then I'm just kind of a basketball junkie too. But I worked over at Memorial for Coach Wilson, and when COVID hit, the next year he stepped down. So I got out, and then a couple years, and I'm just bored. And so I got a good friend Nathan Fleener and one of my best friends Brian Spears, an assistant, used to be the head coach at Harrison. And so last year I just said, do you guys mind if I come to practice? So I started going to practice, and then I kind of write notes, and then you guys they'd ask me, you want to scout? I'd go scout with them. And then this year they said, you want to sit on a bench? I'm like, no, you don't want me on a bench. I bring more headache than you'll have people bitching and complaining. And I said, but they're like, no, seriously. So I did it, but it's been awesome. It's been awesome. And good kids, and a good program. And, I do enjoy it. But the game has changed so much. That's the hard part. Where, I remember the 3-point line coming in my junior, senior year. I forget. I remember Coach Hinton saying, I remember practice started. It was the very first practice. I made a shot, and I guess I was on the line. Never even looked down at the line. I shot a shot, top the key or whatever, and it made it. He stopped practice. He walked over to me. He said, this is the last time we're going to discuss this. And he said, he stood behind the line a foot. He goes, this for you in the right setting is a good shot. And then he put his foot on the line. He said, this is a terrible shot. And I looked at him, and he said, do you understand what I'm saying? I said, yep, got it. And basically what he's saying, if you're going to shoot this outside shot, move back 3 inches and make 3 instead of 2. Got it. That was the last thing discussed about 3-point shooting. I mean, we didn't set plays up. We didn't high ball screen. We thankfully, I was blessed to have been coached a motion type of offense, blah, blah, blah. Never really thought about the 3-point line. I don't know how many 3-pointers I shot my senior year. I mean, I shot some, but I wouldn't say I shot probably, I don't know, 3 a game maybe. I've shot those before the 3-point line. But the point is, now that's all it is the 3-point line. It's unbelievable. And people complain, well, there's no mid-range jump shot anymore. I'm like, well, why would there be? It's kind of like Coach Chen said. This is a good shot for you. This is a bad shot. He just moved 3 inches. And he's basically saying, this is a good shot, this is a bad shot. But now this is all kids want to do, and shoot threes. And then, knock on wood, hopefully Friday night against Castle, we don't get in foul trouble. But like, I remember you're going inside. We want to get the other team's best player in foul trouble or a good player in foul trouble. And we want to get to the free throw line and blah, blah. Just shoot threes. I mean, it's just, that's all the game is anymore. And, when you go to percentages and all that, those number things, I get where a 3-point line is very important, and you have to be able to shoot the basketball from three to win today. I mean, it's just the way it is. And that hurts me a little bit because, again, I like the old way of doing things. I thought it was a lot more of a chess match, the way it once was. But I mean, it's still basketball and it's kids, and I enjoy it. But the game, it's different. It's much different.
Besides Floyd Central and besides Assembly Hall, what were some of your favorite gymnasiums to play in where you just felt like you were really on your game and you enjoyed it? And also, what high school or college do you think had the smartest fan base? And then there are some places where, hell, you didn't even want to go.
So nobody has a smart fan base. Nobody. I always used to think that, I always Notre Dame football fans everywhere here, so I'll get in trouble. But Notre Dame football fans are a different group, and prideful, and that's awesome. But I didn't grow up as a Notre Dame football fan, so I just kind of shake my head and go, okay. And then, Kentucky basketball fans, you always hated to argue with because, I could always say, well, we didn't cheat. And they'd say, well, everybody cheats. Well, no, we didn't. But you couldn't ever tell a Kentucky fan that. And I'm joking when I say that, but I think fan bases, again, and I blame this on social media. Everyone has an opinion. And I mean, not everybody was a great basketball player. Not everybody played high school sports, whatever the case may be. But if you're a fan and you have a cell phone and Twitter or X or whatever they call it, you have an opinion. And I just sometimes want to say, I would be terrible. Like, that's where I'm like, stay off of it. Don't hit send, because I think it was even on yours. You posted something about me one time or a picture, and maybe it was with Henderson or whatever. And there was a guy on there that said something about good player, bad haircut. I was like, and it just like it popped up. Like, I don't even go through normally and read those. And the reason I don't is because it's mostly idiots, absolute idiots. And, I want to fire back. This is how stupid I am. I look at I hit on his thing and he's bald head. I swear to you, there's no lightning strike me dead. And I was like, I don't think I thought, nope, not going to do it. I'm not breaking my rule. That is a fact. You can go back and look at him. I promise you it's still there. I wanted so badly, but then I'm like, oh, then he'll have, I don't want to say something and somebody comes back and that's his dad or, whatever. I was like, I'm going to walk into something bad here. So I thought, nope, just not going to say anything. But I'm thinking, I was a college kid. We all went to the barbershop. We didn't care what our hair looked like. Are you kidding me? Why don't you come and live my world up there in Bloomington going through those injuries for 20 minutes and you can question my haircut. But again, I'm just using that as an example. People have he may be a high school coach. He could be a college coach, but you're talking about people that's never played the game of basketball. You're talking about people that's maybe never played sports, but they're Indiana or Purdue or Iowa or whatever fan, and they're going to post comments. And it's just, mind-boggling to me. I know a little bit about that. I'm not saying I'm the smartest guy. Trust me, I'm not. I um I know a little bit, and I have a general sense of what those players at IU and probably a lot of the players at different schools are going through when they lose and when they win, and when they're going through a 2-game skid or a 3-game skid, or they're on the road, free throw percentages. I get all that stuff. I lived it. So it's not easy. But when you get on just blast kids, now the one thing I always say is I can blast kids about playing hard, because to me it's, well, I give my kid a $20 bill for every D he brings home, as in dog. No, you don't give a kid $20 for every D. You can't play a kid or pay a kid because he played hard. That should just be done. Like, that's just a guarantee you have to do when you're getting your education paid for. And you have a little bit of pride for the school and all that. My problem with college sports is with the transfer portal and all this, I don't know how much pride in the school or the program kids have today. Where those teams I played on, we were invested, man. And there was a few guys and good friends of mine that transferred, and that's okay. I don't have a problem with the transfer thing, but when you can just jump ship, I mean, hell, now it's high school. Kids in high school transfer everywhere. Coach says something, or I don't get my playing time, go to another school. Like, when did this happen? It's just the whole dynamic of athletics, for what I like about them, is kind of left the building, I guess. It's just different.
So what were some of your favorite places to play in the Big Ten?
See, I get off topic. You don't.
Oh, by the way, I like your
Place to play.
haircut. By the way, I like your haircut today.
I wasn't even planning on getting that dig in, but that was funny. It's like my haircut. Like, I've never woke up in my life and worried about my hair. Trust me. Purdue was a bear for obvious reasons. The funny thing about, like, Matt Painter and Link Darner and Matt Waddell and those guys, and like, we all kind of knew each other, and like, we were all friends. You know what I'm saying? Like, we were all, but the fan base made Indiana and Purdue hate each other. And I always just laughed. I was like, Matt Painter's one of my, I mean, again, we played AU together. I root for Matt Painter. I love Matt Painter. And but fan base, when I say I really like Matt Painter, like, you don't like Indiana. I'm like, oh my God, people, I'm 53 years old. Like, grow up. But Purdue was a bear because of the fans. I mean, that was obvious. Illinois was one of the hardest shooting. Now, every player might have different opinions on this. Illinois was one of the worst places to play, because I remember my freshman year where my high school had breakaway rims. Everybody had breakaway rims. We went to Illinois, they didn't have breakaway rims. And you want to talk about unbelievable hard to shoot on? Well, the rim's the same, trust me. You shoot on a breakaway rim and you shoot on a regular rim, there's a difference. Minnesota's floor, that was so jacked up. I'm sure they've changed it. I remember when we played, like, you would be dribbling and like, yeah, of course, I think there was, obviously it was a false bottom, but like, you're dribbling down and I mean, you just hit a dead area, and like, the ball would go like 6 inches below your hand. Like, it was weird. That was a different one. Michigan State were tough. I mean, it was just a bear. But, and then here, I'm gonna jump off on another subject. What pisses me off about everybody goes, it's hard to win on the road. Absolutely is hard to win on the road. I'm not questioning that. You go back and look at those 5 years I was there, we won a lot of games on the road. And I don't know how many. We didn't lose many at home. And this is one thing I'll say about, and I'm probably giving my mates a lot of credit. I'm giving Coach Knight and Coach Dockich and Coach Felling and, a lot of credit. I don't know very many games where, I started a lot of games. I come off the bench a lot of games. I was hurt 2 years. But I can remember walking out on the floor very few times going, man, we are way better and more athletic than this other team we're playing. I mean, it just didn't happen very often. I mean, when you look at the Fab Five and you're playing against Kentucky, and I mean, Kansas, like Florida State. I'm like, whole, and then of course you just go to the Big Ten with Michigan State and Michigan and Ohio State, Tregley and Jimmy Jackson. Like, we were never the most gifted, most athletic team. I mean, even in our preseason games, like you look up and go, we're in trouble. And we had proof for those 5 years that I can brag about. And the only reason I'm bragging about it, I was there, so I can speak about it. I mean, we had pretty good records, and we were not the most athletic team. And that's what hurts me, because that team in Bloomington right now has got some guys. They got some bodies. They got some studs. And so that, yeah, again, it hurts my soul. It's not like I'm calling anyone out or trying to piss anyone off. It's just facts. And we did it with a lot of different things. We had great coaches. We had great game plans. But you had some dogs. I mean, I'm not saying we were angels in college, and we were dogs. I mean, we knew how to play hard. We knew how to compete. We knew our rules. We knew um, the game plan. Go left shoulder. If he goes left, he's want to come back right. But you had to know those things, and I had to know them when you're, Kendall Gill's walking up the floor with the ball, and I turn around and I'm the only guy that doesn't have a man, and I've got to take this guy. I'm like, oh, I'm done. And so they're calling clear out, basically, and I'm like, okay, what's you kind of go back to your rules, like what the game plan was, and you always knew you had help. I mean, I always said those teams we played on IU, there wasn't anybody that we couldn't go book one-on-one. I mean, really, Greg Graham and Reynolds, Jamal, they were good defenders. I mean, they were athletes, they were strong, they were quick. That was it. I mean, we didn't have very, very good on-ball defenders on those teams. But man, as a team, I mean, I think I'm not saying we were the best, but we were pretty good team defense. And that's just kind of knowing the system and knowing the rules and all that good stuff. And that's what I think today's game is missing, is those things. But again, we were all there 3 and 4 years, and what we weren't coming in transfer portals. I mean, it was a system that you knew better as a senior than you did as a freshman. Those days were. I mean, there's just so many things that's changed. But yeah, Minnesota was the toughest floor. And then it was just all those other ones are just bears to play at. Just, of course, Coach Knight was hated, respected, but hated. So you had that dynamic. I mean, we go to Northwestern, we're getting booed, and probably more than half was Indiana fans in their arena. But the Northwestern fans were booing Knight. I mean, it was everywhere we went.
Speaking of Coach Knight, what was your initial reaction, or how did you feel, or was it a punch to the gut, or what was it like when you heard that he had passed away?
It was relief to me, and here's why I say that. His son Pat and I were best friends in college, and we kind of drifted apart when the Texas Tech thing happened, and that's both of our faults. But we're on the same page now, and I love Pat to death. One of my best teammates I ever had at any level. We had touched base, and so I knew things had started going bad, obviously way before the day that it happened. And I knew probably his last, months, it was really bad. And so when I say relief, that's what I mean. And I was happy that he's where he needs to be, because, I'm of the point where when it's time, and when a person's, doesn't know where he is and who he is, and he's miserable and everyone around him's miserable, and it's time. And, hopefully one of these days, and I'm going to have to go through it with my parents, and my kids hopefully have to go through it with me, and not reversed. But I think it got everybody in different ways, and it just sucked. I mean, there's no other way around it. I don't care if you disliked him or liked him or knew him or didn't know him. Um, it's like I always said, the dumb Purdue fan or the dumb Kentucky fan that hated Indiana and hated Bob Knight, there was still a little bit of respect for the man. And that's just the way he was. And he wasn't for everybody. I mean, you can book that. He was not for everyone. Not everyone could play for him. Not everyone could put up with him. Not everybody could coach under him. Blah blah blah. But there was a lot of good things, a lot of bad things, a lot of bad things he did wrong, and this and that. But I would play for him again in a heartbeat. And so it's just kind of the way it was. But I had a bit of relief when I knew it was when he had passed.
Are you sure that the floor at the Holman Center, that rubber basketball floor, wasn't your
That
favorite
sucked.
place to play?
That one sucked. That was awful too. Yeah, we played there. So the only time that I played there, we never played semi-state there in high school, but I played there. Well, yeah, semi-state my freshman year. So we play Southridge with the Patberg twins. And Floyd Center, we go up there my freshman year, senior laden, we get beat by Southridge, who I think made the state finals. But I walked out, I never forget it. We walked out and I'm like, when are they putting the floor down? Like, that's what I thought. When are they putting the floor down? They're like, this is it. I'm like, this is awful. And I remember they hadn't quite cleaned it yet when we were up there for practice. And it was just, I thought I'd never seen anything like it. I mean, in the state of Indiana, we were all blessed in the state of Indiana because every high school gym's most of the time really nice and really well taken care of. And we played AAU. A lot of times we go play, or even in college, you go shoot around in high school gyms or have walkthroughs in high school gyms. And you're like, this is a goat ranch. Like, this is awful. You have high school teams that play in these gyms. Oh yeah, this is that. I'm like, oh my gosh. So, you just think how good the gyms are in the state of Indiana just because it's important, right? It's important. And then you go to these other places and it's like, oh my gosh, this is awful. That was a terrible floor at Indiana State. Like, that was bad. I never even figured out who. I always made fun of Evans. We always talked about it a little bit, but being from Terre Haute, I'm like, who the hell brought that up? But man, they're good this year. I'll say that.
Not too bad, but once again, the kids looking at social media and thinking about NIL money and all that kind of crap. They lost a couple of games they shouldn't have lost. But Pat,
Yep.
I've had you long. We can chat about it. We ought to do the Indiana years part 2.
Hey, I'm telling you, I told you before we went on. You're. I don't know how I fell onto you on Facebook because I'm Facebook dangerous, but like, your stuff's awesome. Like, I do, like, again, but when I see the old bird stuff, like, I mean, that brings back my childhood. So I always enjoy it. And then when you called, I was like, man, this is going to be kind of cool. So yeah, I will. You got my phone number. All you got to do is text me. I'll come on anytime. I enjoyed it, man. This is awesome.
Well, this
And
is
like I
awesome.
said, I told you, all you got to do is give me a couple of questions and I can go, and I get rambling. And then, like I said, I really enjoy talking about those days. I wish I hope people understand how important. I know Brian Evans has talked about it. Todd Leary's talked about it. Like, how important back in the days were, and how awesome we knew. Like, Ed Schilling that wrote that book. Like we said, I know how awesome those days were, and I'm appreciative every day that I had those days. I wish every kid had what I had growing up: the coaches, the gyms, the AAU, and most kids don't get that. So I'm very appreciative, and I'm appreciative of what I had.
And at our age, I'm 56, you're 53, and our age, we still use this crap on a daily basis, which is
100%. 100%. 100%. That's why any chance I get to talk about it, I love doing it. And I hopefully, like I said, hopefully somebody's not pissed off that I said something negative about or whatever, but other than the guy that made fun of my haircut. But him I don't care about. But honestly, like no one should ever take offense on a former guy or former player saying something. Like, we all want the same thing and we all have different opinions. It's just the problem is I probably have a little bit more angst with it because of where I played, and in the time I played is a bigger thing. So we're not after anyone or whatever. We just want the best thing for Indiana and the state of Indiana and class basketball and all that stuff. We all have opinions on it, and I'm not saying I'm right. It's just my opinion.